So what we were talking about before I was crackling was AD has reached a pinnacle in his career where he has podcasts dedicated to him and his federal vision ways.
This is true. And I think that he has 2 videos about me.
No.
But I only watched the one.
Oh my gosh. You shouldn't even retweeted that. He probably got the most views he's ever gotten, and now he's just going to constantly talk about it because you retweeted it for him.
I'm okay with that.
It's out of control. It's out of control. Have you been watching the boring Senate trial, impeachment trial?
No.
Yeah, I haven't either. I finally found something more boring than baseball on TV, and it's the Senate trial. It's terrible.
Yeah, so yeah, he's got the one he posted yesterday. AD Robles has no gospel. And then 2 months ago, AD Robles drinks the preterist postmillennial federal vision Kool-Aid. That one's an hour long.
An hour? Oh my god.
That one's an hour and 13 minutes long.
I couldn't do it. Oh my god. I was wanting to just die after the 20-minute video. The only reason I listened to it is to have something to say about it here on this show. It was painful. At least if you're going to be like obsessive about federal vision, at least do it well.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
I was telling Matt before we went live that at least he had the decency of saying that I claim that I'm not federal vision. Even though he doesn't believe me, at least he told his 3 viewers that I claim to not be.
Yeah.
No, listen, we all got to start somewhere. I mean, look, maybe this is going to grow into a big channel. He's got 200 videos. That's a lot of videos.
Yeah, he's aspiring to reach the Russell Moore level. But I ask you about the trial with the impeachment because I haven't been watching either, but I saw the clips of it where Rand Paul's question didn't get read. He had a question, and Justice Roberts, is it? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who's overseeing this whole thing, decided not to read his question. Like I guess all the senators get to read questions, and they just told him no for no reason. We're not going to read it. Everyone else's gets read, but his doesn't. It's a little concerning.
But do we know what the question was?
Yeah, he read it, and it was just like a normal question. He names a few people, and there's like a whole bunch of theories going on about, he was going to drop the whistleblower name, but it didn't mention it at all. And then I saw on the tweet Molly Hemingway, she's actually a reporter, like a legit reporter who
an actual reporter. Things.
Yeah, an actual one, not a reporter in name only.
Gotcha.
She said, "Why was Rand Paul's question not asked? By what law or what justification was he silenced? This is extremely scary to witness, and answers are needed." And I think that's right, especially because the Supreme Court justice, the Chief Justice, was the one who did it.
Right.
The fair and impartial, law-abiding pillar of our country is doing this stuff.
It's super weird. I mean, okay, so I got nothing. I mean,
I know.
I'm trying to think of a way that this makes any sense.
It doesn't. But I just bring it up because for those of you who have hope that stacking the deck in the courts is going to fix anything that we have as problems, it's just not. This guy is supposed to be one of the conservatives. This is supposed to be one of our guys. And if he's playing these games where he won't even read an honest question that might like hit at the deep state, like who cares if he like outed the whistleblower?
Right.
If he won't read that, then what is he doing with his decisions?
Right. Isn't this supposed to be a trial? Like, I mean, why are these names at this point being held? I mean, this is his trial.
Right. I don't know.
If they'll do it with the president, they'll do it with anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I know. It is scary. I totally agree with Molly here. It is extremely scary to witness, to see like everyone's cards are coming out on the table.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
We'll get into that in a second, a little further.
That's what's been so. Let me just say that that's been great about Trump's presidency in general. Like everyone, it has revealed themselves completely in a non-creepy way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in a real creepy way, but you know what I mean. Like everyone's true motivations and stuff like that ever since he got elected is just, and not just in the culture at large, but in Big Eva and the circles we run in, like we know what everyone's all about now.
Yeah, definitely. And it's getting more extreme too. I wonder when it's going to stop, like not just with politics, but even like what you said with Big Eva and with, even the truly reformed people.
Oh,
and,
yes.
They're like popping up more pages. They have more interactions. They unblock us to comment and then block us and then uncomment to block us again. It's getting crazy out there. When's it going to end?
I don't know about you savages, but I haven't been blocked by any of these people.
Yes, you have. I guarantee you have. Because I've been blocked by people that I call the Federal Vision Hall Monitor now group, the R. Scott Clark and broads that he has.
Oh, he does have a few broads.
Yes. So I just decided yesterday to start naming them the Federal Vision Hall Monitors. But they will block. They blocked me, and I've never even heard of some of them before. I just would see them interacting, and I didn't see their tweet. And then I saw them, and anyways, it's crazy.
If I had to guess what's going on with why I'm not blocked by either of them, any of these people, is that I think they think that I want to be blocked, and so they don't want to give me the satisfaction to know that I've got to them. But I don't care at all. I don't follow them. I enjoy seeing their stupidity from time to time. But, if you want to block me, that's fine. But I don't care one way or the other. Let's just put that out there.
Just wait till those 80 hateful podcasts go viral. I mean, that 75-year-olds, when people hear it and they see how dangerous you are. Yeah. 80 does not have a gospel or whatever it was called.
I don't even have one.
You don't have a gospel. And yeah, Big Nick talks about Dershowitz. He's on the president's team, which... Like all the liberals hate, not the liberals, but all the leftists hate him now because he is a true liberal. Which I hate making the distinction because they all vote for the same plans anyways. But
sure, right. There's not much difference in the end.
Right. It's a distinction without a difference to me.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe you have some philosophies, but the practice and the application of it is the same. Okay, time for conspiracy theory of the week. Now, I am going to read you. It's from my friend's post, and she's one of the non-vaxxer people, and she sells the cannabis oil. Yeah. So I'm not going to say her name because I don't know if she wants me to read it to her. But it's a good conspiracy theory. I like it. In case you missed it, and by the way, these facts are true. I've seen them in the news.
Okay,
in case you missed it, federal agents arrested Dr. Charles Lieber, chair of Harvard University's Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology, with lying to the Department of Defense about secret monthly payments of $50,000 from China. That is true. And receipts of millions more to help set up a chemical biological research laboratory in China. I don't know if that part's true. Also arrested were 2 Chinese students working at research assistants. One of them was actually a lieutenant in the Chinese army, and the other captured at Logan Airport as he tried to catch the flight to China, smuggling 21 vials of a sensitive biological samples, according to the FBI. The research lab that the good professor had helped set up is located at Wuhan University of Technology. That is ground zero of this coronavirus pandemic.
Okay.
It was a Harvard professor who created this
for
coronavirus. Snuck into China where they poisoned themselves to spread it around the world.
I don't know about that one.
I don't know about that one either, but I do know that in Wuhan is the only high level chemical research lab that China has where they try to develop vaccines for all these deadly viruses.
Huh.
So it might just be incompetence, quite honestly.
Right. I mean, that would be a much easier explanation, I suppose. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. It's
really interesting, too, in the last couple of years since Trump has become president, another Trump effect, I think. All of these Chinese agents and spies have been being rooted out of the country. It's like they've been here for 20, 30 years. Dianne Feinstein's chauffeur,
right?
This person at Harvard. And all of a sudden, everyone's starting to care about what these people are doing.
It's there's a lot of pro-Trump conspiracy theories that talk about how Trump is secretly the most courageous person ever. Like he's rooting out all these deep state elements and all these spies and stuff like that. It's just crazy. There's lots of weird theories out there. Put it that way.
Yeah. James says, does anyone else think that this virus hitting China seems interesting timing, that just as the prosecution of Christians has been ramped up, a serious virus breaks out in China? I have not put those two together. It could be. It could be.
Very interesting.
That is an interesting conspiracy theory. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, people are apparently freaking out about it. I got a way better refinance rate for my cash out refi than I normally would have, thanks to the coronavirus.
There you go.
Might be a good time to refi. And hey, you just bought a house. You probably got a pretty good interest rate too.
I sure did. Yeah.
That's great. We can thank the Chinese and the Harvard professor.
Oh man. So you know, coronavirus. So what do I don't really know too much about it, but it's basically like a kind of like a serious flu-like disease or something like that. The situation.
From what I understand so far, it is the similar symptoms to having pneumonia.
All right.
But we don't understand all the symptoms, how it's carried, how, but it's spreading rapidly.
What I heard is like it spreads so easily that like if you have a mask, it could like spread through your eye juice. That's weird, right?
I know that viruses do that, though. It just depends on the size of them.
Right.
Yeah. So, and they don't know if it can spread. Like the big thing is can it spread before their symptoms?
I heard that it could, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense with, how fast it's spreading. So speaking of the deep state, did you see that video of CNN mocking everybody using the Hick accent? I don't know if saying Hick is mocking in and of itself, but the Southern accent. I got to be careful now. I live in Florida. I can't get away with that anymore.
Country folks, country folk. Accent.
Yeah. And
I
think it's amazing just from like the openness of it nowadays.
Yeah. This is a phenomenon that I've talked about in Christian circles as well. That there's just this idea that like these country folks are like backwards, like almost like they're living in the Stone Age, and they're all ignorant, they're all stupid, and we city folk on TV, we're the intelligent, educated ones, and so it's almost like there's a disdain. There's definitely a disdain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the disdain's been there for a long time, quite honestly. But the interesting thing to me is how open it has become, and maybe it is the Trump effect. Maybe it is just they don't care anymore. You don't think so? What do you think it is?
I don't think it's the Trump effect because the earliest I remember seeing like a major political figure doing something like this was with Obama, and Obama was saying something about how like basically like they're clutching their guns in fear and their Bibles. They're just so fearful, like as if country folks are just like these doofuses that are just like, oh my goodness, I guess I gotta believe in God because I'm so scared, and I have a lot of guns because I'm terrified. Like that's the image that you get. And I listen. Here's the thing: if I was lined up in a group of country folks and city folks, and you said, okay, say some words and we'll tell you whether you're city or country, I'd go. People would peg me as a city guy, no question about it. Mm-hmm. But I've lived in the country for a long part of my life, and so I know what goes on, what's said about country folk and things like that. And it's I don't like it. I like country folk.
Yeah,
that's why I'm wearing my camo hat.
I know it was such a funny adjustment to me. Again, I grew up in California, moved to Hawaii, and then came down to the South in Florida. And people, they ask you, "Hey, how's it going?" And it's an actual question. That was a serious adjustment for me.
Yeah.
People actually want to know how I'm doing. Neighbors bring over baked goods when you move into a house. What is this? I lived in an apartment for 8 years.
Yeah.
And never met my neighbors once in California. It's true.
And this is a phenomenon that's not just an American thing. A lot of every country has this. I remember talking to a buddy of mine in New York. Actually, he's a Libyan and he used to live in Libya, and he told me that Gaddafi was always mocked early on before he was a dictator because he had sort of this like essentially like a hillbilly in Libya accent, like he was a hillbilly in Libya, and so like this is not uncommon. Even in the Bible, you see like them talking about, does anything good come from Nazareth? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's a bunch of city folks that just are just like, we got it going on, but everyone else, I don't know about that.
Yeah. In England, it's still a real thing where you can't progress past a certain point. If you have a certain English accent and stuff, I don't know. It all sounds the same to me.
Right.
But I don't honestly care about CNN. I mean, CNN sucks. No one listens to it.
Yeah. I haven't, since I remember in high school when I found out what it was, I thought it was so cultured to watch it, but I haven't watched it since.
Yeah, it is interesting though that it did start off as like cable news network, and they really were angling as being straight news, like almost, the public broadcasting channels and stuff where they're just talking in a monotone voice. And now it's turned into this comedy hour for liberal elites. It's really interesting. But the thing that is concerning to me is we're seeing this in Christian circles too. Big time, right?
Yeah.
Which is concerning for a number of reasons, but it makes me just wonder. It's like, how long are we going to put up with it as a church? Now, I'm not in the denominational circles. I mean, I grew up my whole life in non-denominational circles, but I don't understand. Like, there's got to be a point where the denominations come together and start like kicking these people out, right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to get to that point. Here's what I think. I think what's more likely to happen is that the groups that are on the outs, so let's just say the Presbyterian Church in America, right? You got country Presbyterian churches, and then you got city Presbyterian churches. Mm-hmm. I think what's more likely to happen is that the country folks just get fed up and leave. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be a part of this kind of thing anymore. But you could see, so you could see this kind of thing, I think it manifests itself in theology in a certain way. So right now, if you were to go onto Twitter, which Matt, I know you would never do this, but if you were to go onto Twitter and say something, maybe a little more conservative than you are, just like throw it out there, something more conservative than you ought to be. Like, I don't know, say something like this. I'm trying to think of something good. I think that the Bible teaches if you're a woman and you intentionally seek out to not have kids, that you're probably in sin. Now, if you were to say something like that, people would freak out. They would lose their minds, right? But if you were to say something on to the left of where you should be, like,
you'll get retweeted by Beth Moore.
You'll get retweeted by everybody, and you'll get a lot of love, and you'll be so open-minded and so loving and so gracious. And it's like, okay, so that's telling you something, that when it comes down to it, you'd rather someone fall in the liberal, progressive, cosmopolitan ditch than the maybe too conservative ditch. And that's one way it plays out in theology. If you retweet Doug Wilson, you'll get a lot of grief. But if you retweet the gay Christian people will be like, interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, that is so true. And it just reveals again where Big Eva is.
Yeah.
And it's
cosmopolitan.
It's cosmopolitan. It's elitism, country club.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, especially the people that are funded by these smaller churches, like they're supposed to be working for the people you're mocking and you disdain and you hate. So how long are these people going to be supporting it? Eventually this has got to come crashing down.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be able to support themselves for long, thankfully, with their 30 views and whatnot on YouTube.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know how long they're going to be able to do it or not. But the point is, it's very to me, it's very distasteful to me to see that this whole thing where you could share the gay Christian stuff all day long, and even if people push back, they're going to push back but be like, well, it's very, it's debatable. And we were talking about Doug Wilson right before this. And Doug Wilson's a perfect example. He always says things that are more conservative than the center, and they lambast him for it all the time. Yeah. And it's very obvious to me that the proper, Big Eva conference speaking gigs, that's a very cosmopolitan thing. Doesn't really have a place for country folk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think a part of it is elitism. Like, he doesn't have his seminary degree. that James White gets it from the Baptist side because his wasn't an accredited school.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of funny though, because those two guys are so well read.
Yeah.
That it bores me to death, quite honestly.
Well, another way it plays out is when you see people that they almost kind of ask for your credentials before they're willing to hear you. Right. I remember this may have been R. Scott Clark, but I don't want to say it definitely was because I don't remember. But basically, he's asking about like where you went to seminary, if you dare challenge me. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And this is, and even if it wasn't him, you know the attitude, right? I mean, it's this kind of person, and it's really kind of an annoying thing, and it's very elitist. It's, to be honest, like I know this is kind of a party foul, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's pharisaical is what it is. Yeah. I don't need a seminary degree to challenge the stupidity that you say every single day, and you might not respect me, but I don't care.
Right. It's that same attitude of, aren't they from Nazareth? Like, isn't Jesus? It's the same questions, right?
Who is your teacher?
Yeah, exactly. It's really just like an ad hominem to the next level where you it's not just necessarily that you're attacking the person, but you disqualify them before they even say anything if they don't have the credentials that you think they have.
Here's J.E. Myers. As a country Christian, I missed most of what y'all said, but it's probably true or true enough. It was true. It was.
Yes, it's true. But the other thing I think it is, besides the credentials, is that you kind of touched on it, is that Doug Wilson says things that are practical. And he is applying the theology that he believes. Yep. And that's not safe. That's not comfortable. Yep. That's dangerous. That leads to deplatforming. That leads to not being welcomed in the news articles and being asked to do interviews. Because if you're going to actually live out the Christian faith, the world might hate you. Yeah. And I just feel like Big Eva doesn't like the world hating them that much anymore. Yeah.
It's dirty work sometimes. So I think you're right about that. So everyone likes to talk a big game where it's like, well, you know, if they hated Christ, they're going to hate you too, you know, and all that kind of thing. And everyone talks a big game like that. Mm-hmm. But when it all comes down to it, they say things in such a way that they will avoid that as much as possible. And so you end up saying, homosexuality is not God's best for you. And you'll say something like that, where it's like, yeah, you're kind of right. And you're kind of taking a stand, but you're almost apologizing for it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and Doug Wilson doesn't do that. He doesn't talk in that way. And that's dirty work, because then you get smeared by people. Then you get people retweeting you and like, well, look at this guy, he's such a bigot, and stuff like that. And I think, that's one of the, I've said this before about Doug, but it's not just Doug. There's other people like this, but one of the appeals that he has is that he doesn't talk down to you. He makes things very accessible, and it's very easy to follow what he's saying a lot of the time. Some people would disagree with me on that. That's fine. But it's not this sort of like high-minded elite, thing where it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, man.
Right. And he talks like a man, quite honestly.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to pre-qualify everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like he has to make excuses about what he's going to say.
Yeah.
And he might hurt somebody. Like, he talks like a man.
Yeah.
And I hate to do this again to him, but he's kind of like the Trump of the Christian world. You have in politics, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, and they fight vigorously when the camera's on, and then they go and eat dinner together off camera.
Yeah. Well, maybe Trump is the Doug Wilson of the secular
Let's do that. Okay, let's say it that way. But then Trump comes on the scene and doesn't care about eating dinner with either of them. He doesn't need whatever. He doesn't want it. He doesn't need it, whatever it is, of that acceptance. Yeah. And he's just going to start smashing bowls and stuff like that. And I feel like Doug is kind of that way too, where he really means what he says. And if it's going to have disruption, to use a tech word, and be disruptive and innovative, then he's going to do it. And he doesn't care if you're going to go out of business for it. He doesn't need anything from you. He's self-sufficient. He's self-sustaining.
Well, it's so funny because you can even see some of the ways that they would make fun of Trump that were kind of like childish, but you could see where they're coming from. And it's like, one of the things I remember is it came out that he eats steaks well done. And it's like, well, Wow, what an idiot. You know what I mean? And then like he eats McDonald's. Like that became an issue, I believe. And
Yeah,
well, how healthy is he? I mean, he's eating a Big Mac. I can't believe it. And it's like that man is so rich, and he doesn't give two rips about what you think. He wants to have a Big Mac, he's going to have a Big Mac, and that's all there is to it. And I've been this cosmopolitan type that in the past, when I first moved to New York, I was working on Wall Street, and I wasn't making that much money yet because I was new, and I remember thinking, well, I got to go to lunch, and I got to find a place that's like respectable. Like I'm not going to eat up from the street carts or McDonald's or anything like that. So I would spend way too much money, and that was my attitude because I felt like that's what the cosmopolitan people had to do. Trump, Doug, they're not like that. I'm not saying Doug eats well done steaks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does.
No, I went out to lunch with him at G3. It's medium rare. Interesting. James says that Trump actually does several of the things Doug recommends in Rules for Reformers. I think Trump's federal vision.
Well, Trump is a genius when it comes to this stuff. There's just no question about it.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I can't wait for his next 4 years where he doesn't have to worry about being reelected. It'll be interesting. Like, if there was any more uncensored, I'm going to be interested just to see if there's like a new level of not caring about what people think.
Well, speaking of, we're kind of sidetracked here, but did you read Doug's article about Trump?
No, Monday? I didn't.
About how he's considering voting for him this time around.
No, I heard that. I heard that all the cross politic people and all that are going to vote for him now because of the liberal stuff. Is that what it was? Because of how crazy the liberals are?
Well, sort of. No, but it's basically about how like before he had some concerns about his character and about him, probably not doing what he said he would do. But obviously now he's got some track record to work with, and he's like, well, he actually is doing a lot of things that he said he would do. So he's shown himself somewhat trustworthy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like right there with him on that. And was that the same article where he talks about how big of a deal it was for him to go to the March for Life? Okay, I read like half of it. Yeah. I did think that was interesting, but I'm still waiting for the day where governors and the president obviously will just start enforcing that as murder. Abortion is murder. Yeah. Like, what are we waiting for? We're definitely not going to get a John Roberts who won't read a Ron Paul question to overthrow this. No, it's got to be some guy who's going to be bold. Yeah,
it's got to be someone who doesn't care if he goes to prison or jail for a little bit.
Right.
Because here's the thing, like that kind of a thing, like pagans, they don't play around. So if you mess with one of their sacraments, and it's a blood sacrament, if you mess with one, then they'll pull out all the stops. Yeah. So if you're a governor, even if it's illegal for so let's just say a governor, in a legislature, let's just say it's, I don't know, New Hampshire or something, bans it. Right. And then like you could see like the maneuvers that would happen there. They would, we got to get an injunction. We got to do this. We got to do that. The Supreme Court's got to rule. And if the governor just said, nope, we're not doing it, we don't have to, they would pull out all the stops. There would be things that would happen. I think that they would be jailed.
Yeah. It would be interesting too, because from what I understand, and again, I'm not some kind of scholar on this, but the Supreme Court does not have any enforcement mechanism.
No,
it would have to come from Trump's executive branch. So that would be interesting to see. But I think you're totally right. And we're actually seeing it happen. I've been seeing the abolitionists be so upset lately because there's been pro-life people killing bills that would abolish. I think it was in Texas was one. Oklahoma might have been in another one. Maybe Indiana too. There's a few going around.
Right? Yeah, there's been a few recently.
Indiana, thanks, Cal. Yeah. And I honestly almost give the pro-lifers a benefit of the doubt. I don't think all of them are in it for the money. Although, yes, I mean, it is hard to kind of give up on that. But to me, that's kind of the same answer. Like drug companies don't want to find a cure for cancer. I think they do, even though they're making money because they'd make more money. I think pro-life people really do believe that, but they are ingrained in the system and all that. But I think what we're seeing is people pulling out all the stops and then them cowarding out. I'm not justifying it and saying they did the right thing. I think they're wrong. They should have stood up. They should have voted for it. But I think we're seeing behind the scenes what you're talking about is this all-out war. You are not going to mess with our sacrament.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, you're probably right. Like there is no enforcement mechanism. Okay, I'm cool with that. and it would have to come from Trump's executive branch. Okay, but you have to understand that there are ways to get Trump out of the way, or to manipulate Trump. Like I don't think that they would go out without violence. They would do whatever it took.
Oh, well, I think we're starting to see it with Antifa and all that stuff, with Virginia and what they're trying to do. I mean, I think it's still going to get a lot worse than it is now before anything gets resolved in all circles that we've been talking about. Yeah,
James is right. I think that whoever seeks to do this kind of stuff has to be ready to go to jail, to be assassinated, to whatever it takes. And that's a hard thing to ask somebody.
Yeah, it is. And that's why it's important, I think, to vote in people that have Christian values, because someone who doesn't have a Christian foundation and is solely living for this world, their career and all that stuff, they're not going to do this stuff ever.
Yeah. And this is the thing, is that people are like, oh, that's just crazy, Adam. How could you say such a thing? And it's like, well, I don't think it's that crazy at all to say, people who want it to be legal to kill babies would also kill me if I stand against them. Like, that's not a big logical jump. There's no moral reason why they shouldn't want to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a big, I know people would think I'm crazy for saying that, but why?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, in Canada, man, we're so off topic, but who cares? This is good. In Canada, they have the euthanasia. Am I saying that correctly? Where you can kill the people that are elderly about to die. They can take the pill, and they just removed it to being like to include people that are starting to be sick and going to have like life-ending diseases, and they're starting to move it back more and more and more. It's like eventually it's going to be being able to kill people for whatever is justifiable by the culture. I mean, we're not far off. It's creeping in.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I wanted to talk about something that kind of is the foundation for all of this stuff in our culture, is public schools. And I was seeing this and I want to talk about it because, one, it was trending on Twitter and I couldn't even believe this. I love public schools. And the only reason, even if you do not have our perspective or Christian worldview, the only way that you can say you love public schools is if you don't know better. Woo. I mean, seriously.
Woo. You said it. I didn't say it.
Oh, my gosh. You went to public school?
Of course.
Do your kids go to public school?
My kids aren't school age, but no, they're not going to. They're not going to. Okay.
Yeah. Mine is not either. They are not going. I went to private and public school.
I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm glad you said that.
Oh, okay.
I just want you to get in trouble, not me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's what we do here. We throw each other under the bus. So there was this hashtag going around, and in the very same thread, I saw a Discerned article out about how they're starting to have queers come in and read to their kids. And so my question that I kind of want to discuss, because I don't think we've talked about it on the show. I've talked about it on my show, on my business show, which I don't know. I tried to make it work because it's important to me. Is it sinful to put your kids through public school? And I want to talk about that. I have a poll question out for all the people watching live. I'm going to pull that up as I'm finishing my setup for this. And the objections come. I can't afford it. What else? What other choice do I have? Both of us have to work. All of those things. But still, so I want to talk about that. Like, is there exemptions where it's not sinful if we think it is sinful, and stuff like that? So, from your perspective, AD, is it sinful for us as Christians to be sending our kids to public school?
Okay, so it can't be a yes or no for me. I think that there are situations, there are exemptions that I think possibly could, and notice I'm nuancing this to death. Possibly could excuse you.
Okay.
Putting your kids in public school. But if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably not you. and I'm serious about that, because if you're listening to this podcast, you clearly have a certain amount of means. You know what I'm saying? Like if you have a computer and you have a cell phone or whatever, however you're watching this or listening to this, you have a certain amount of means at your disposal. And so what I would say is that for the most part, if you're watching this, you probably have enough means to take your kids out of public school if you wanted to, if you really wanted to. Mm-hmm. The question is, do you really want to? Because you may have to sacrifice on a lot of things, not just, and I'm not saying in a trivial way, You may have to sacrifice on a lot of where you live, what neighborhood you live. You might have to sacrifice on, what you drive, or even do you have a computer, or do you have an updated computer, or whatever it is, or you have a nice cell phone, or whatever it is. Maybe you'll be eating beans and rice for a while, that kind of thing. So the question, and I'm not trying to trivialize that. That's a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
But it's worth your kid's soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. On the polls, it's split. Yes, no, maybe on the people watching live. And I think it comes down to first, and again, a lot of these things that seem difficult to me, if we just pull back and kind of get a high level perspective of what we're talking about here, is as men, we are the head of our families. And what is our number one role as the head of our families? What is our number one ministry in the sphere of influence? I would say, and maybe you'll say it differently than me, but it's to disciple our family towards Christ and to obey him and to raise people up to be faithful to him and to live for him.
Yes.
Is that a fair way to say it? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's pretty fair, man. Yeah.
And so how can you have that vision of your family and think that is what God has required of you, man?
Yes.
Then to say, I'm going to go give him to somebody who's going to teach him the exact opposite of what God wants him to learn.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
you know it.
Absolutely.
And you're going to say, I'd rather have my well done steak.
I think
beans
that
and rice.
Yeah, I think in the past people have had somewhat of an excuse. They didn't really know what was going on, but now everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, and again, you may have arguments. Well, you should have known back in the 80s, back in the 90s, whatever. But now they are getting a full orbed, no holds barred, smash mouth, like Doug Wilson likes to say, pagan worldview. That's what they're getting.
Yeah.
They're not getting Christian worldviews. They're not, it's infected everything. Like if you think I'm joking, like there are woke versions of mathematics now. So like it's everywhere. It's not like nothing is safe. Science isn't even safe. Well, clearly science isn't safe. What am I saying? So, so yes, you're 100% right. Like when your children, whatever they become when they're older, and you as the father are responsible for how they grow up and what, that kind of thing. And when God asks, well, what happened here? He's not going to ask his teacher. He's not going to go ask his math teacher, well, what happened here? Like he's going to ask you. You're his father. You know what I mean? You're responsible for whatever happens. And so in Luke chapter 6, Jesus says it very plainly. He says that everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. And so a lot of people say, well, but you don't understand. Like I'm sending him to school. Yeah. But then I'm teaching him at home. Okay. So the Bible says when he's fully trained, will be like his teacher. So he'll be like you, 20%, and then like his teachers, 80%, because they taught him almost everything that he knows. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, so it's just like, yes, your responsibility is your children. And if you pawn that off on somebody else, it's still your responsibility.
Right. And it kind of goes with what we were talking about last week about bringing your kids into worship. It's hard. It's difficult. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's, even though it's frustrating, even though it's hard, even though it's difficult, even though it takes sacrifice, it's going to be worth it. Right. In the end, there's a reason why a majority of people that name the name of Christ go through the public school system and then get into college and then say adios. It's not happening in college. That's the fruit of it all. And I think you're right about how before a lot of people didn't know it was happening. But I think, and this is my opinion, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it's true. Or I wouldn't say it, obviously. That's a terrible. This is a great hard-hitting podcast right here.
I think this is true.
So I'm going to say it. But the school shootings that we see, the drug addictions that we see, the Antifa, the socialism that we see is all fruit from the time in public schools where we thought everything was neutral.
Yes.
And where we thought it was safe to send our kids to school. And it didn't matter if they weren't being taught about Christ. It didn't matter if they were being taught they were animals. We know from Sunday school class that Jesus created us,
right?
But we're seeing it's wrong. Not just in the Christian church where majority of us are falling away, but in society. In society, there's no good fruit that comes from this, is there?
Right. I don't see how there could be. I mean, it's you mentioned socialism, right? So a bunch of socialists have been produced by the public schools. And so you really have only two options. One, it was done intentionally, or two, the teachers were so incompetent that they accidentally created all these socialists. Either way, that's not good.
Right.
That's not good. Now you mentioned sort of, they learn in church that God created the world. They learned in school that it was random natural selection and random mutations and all that kind of thing. And they hear that from a very authoritative person that their parents sent them to learn about the world.
Yeah.
And then their parents tell them when they get home, maybe if they're lucky, no. But what you don't understand is that actually God really did create the world. And I know that they told you that it was random mutation and natural selection, but actually it's God. And so now they're getting all of these mixed messages. And a lot of kids come out of that and they turn out okay, but a lot of them don't, because they're like, well, this is kind of weird because I'm getting mixed signals here. And this guy at school certainly seemed to know a lot more about it than my father did, because when you ask if my son were to come to me and say, well, tell me about this natural selection and random mutation, I would have very kind of surface level understanding of that.
Right.
And all of a sudden the teacher's more authoritative than I am because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right. And let's be honest, most people that are Christians don't know the Bible like they should either, or defend it or apply it the way they should.
Right.
And the power is gone. And so you do have this conversation where you have an expert that you are kind of validating by saying, hey, you do have to go to school, Timmy, and you do have to do your homework, and you do have to get good grades from this expert. And then they do it, and then they learn what they're saying. And then you come to you and like, oh, we were told that 6 billion years old or whatever it is nowadays.
Right.
We came from animals. And you're like, oh, well, the Bible, I think somewhere said that, we weren't evolved. Well, where?
There's a big disconnect between 6 billion whatever and 6,000 or whatever they say it is in the New Testament. So like something's going to have to give there eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think personally, the schools also, they provide a lot of peer pressure as well. So this is another problem, because now most of their friends are from this same place where they're learning these same things. And not to mention the fact that they also learn at these schools that religion is just sort of this, it's just this optional thing. It's this thing that, it could be part of your life. It doesn't have to be. And they hear about people of faith. It's kind of like all religions tied into one. And so like, and your supposedly Christian parents sent you there, and you're a kid. You're like, well, I thought my parents were Christians, and they're sending me this place where it's like, well, it's kind of optional. My parents aren't telling me it's optional. So again, I've got this expert here telling me it's just another thing. I got my parents who I love. I think a lot of these kids love their parents, of course, but they're confused now because they got a mixed message.
Right.
And now, let me just say something. In the comments, someone is talking about, people that, have to send their kids to school. They have good reasoning to. And Mike, let's see, Big Nick said something that I think is super important. So he says this, he says, the important thing is that you recognize the problem with your kids being in public schools so you can be proactive in your current situation. So if your kids are in public school right now, recognize that you have tremendous challenges ahead of you with your children. Mm-hmm. And so don't ignore that. Number one, if you can, whatever you can do to get them out, get them out. But if you can't, I don't know your situation. So I'm not telling you you're sinning if you're doing it, because maybe you're in that handful of situations that I can understand. But if you're doing that and not being proactive, not intentionally trying to deprogram what they've been programmed in those schools, that's a problem. So whatever you do, like if your kids are in school, if you're going to still be faithful to God, like you have to recognize that you're going to have some mountains to climb, and you got to have to plan to climb them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, again, I guess I should be saying the qualifiers too. There are probably circumstances where I would say like, there's nothing you can do about it. Micah, you're right. We have emailed off before, and I'd say that situation probably applies to you. But a majority of us, like, just thinking about it, the amount of work that you're going to have to put in to counter what your kids are learning, because how education works in a lot of respects is you start learning things and identifying and adding behaviors to yourself that you don't even realize. Yeah. Like, your kid's not going to come home and tell you everything they've learned. And they're definitely not going to tell you things they didn't realize they were learning. They are not going to tell you the cultures they're picking up. So not only are you going to have to have an answer for every single thing they tell you and ask you and challenge you on, but you're going to have to understand and know more about what they're learning than them. And to me, that seems like more work than just homeschooling your kid.
It seems very difficult. It seems very difficult. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, and homeschooling parents, like, we have to also be on guard as well, because, we don't realize that our children pick things up that they see on TV accidentally. And so, like, the other day I put on just because my kid likes, baking, and he likes that kind of thing. So I put on a baking competition that was on like Food Network or something. They're making cakes and they look cool, whatever. Anyway, so, on the commercials for this, like, should be a family friendly show, there's all kinds of, like, sexuality and homosexuality and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, man, like, nothing is safe. There is nothing safe. Like, I have to realize that he's probably picking stuff up from these commercials. Like, I saw a milk commercial the other day with two fathers with a little girl. Yeah. And it's like that's messaging that they are picking up without even realizing that they're picking it up. Right. And so I need to be careful with even stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Super Bowl is going to have a hummus commercial with a transgender person on it. The Super Bowl.
Cal's right. Food Network is not neutral at all. It's definitely not.
Nothing's neutral. Not. And I think another way to say that helps me more is there's nothing that's not religious. There is a religion in everything. It's just to what God does your religion align to. I mean, public school is full of religion. Full of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's full of worship. It's full of priests. Those are the teachers. Those are the scientists. Those are the studies. The Bible, the text is the textbooks, and it's the scientific studies, and it's all like they have the same stuff. It's just preaching a different gospel. And it's just like when you realize that. And so going back to it, it's like, and interesting, like having kids. Before I was kind of passionate about this, but when I started having my son, or when I had my son, like it just became a whole new passion for me, because I didn't realize how desperate I would be for my kids to be saved. Like, and maybe this is my Baptist in me, and you have something to say about this. But
no, I don't think so.
I didn't realize how strong of a desire it would be. I thought it'd be, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to live in faith, be a good Christian dad, and it's all going to work out. But like, I have cried and prayed over my 1.5-year-old son. Like, God, please save him. Like, just be shaping his heart, make him a man after your own heart, even right now. And like, I don't know how I could have those prayers and be honest with myself and my conscience and be like, okay, Timmy, go learn about being, an ape and how really everything's relative. And you can have your math that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. Go learn all that stuff. And I'll just keep praying in my closet. Like it doesn't work. And that's why I'm so strong on saying that it's missing the mark. And maybe I shouldn't say sin, but it's missing the mark of what we're supposed to be raising our kids on. Like, how can you be passionate and wanting to bring your kid to Christ and then go give them to the state?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I don't have a gripe with people that say that it would be sinful to do, because for me, it's like in many situations, it probably is, you know what I mean? Like, so I think you see my point. Like I don't want to call something a sin that the Bible doesn't explicitly call a sin. However, yes, I want to say that if you're listening to this, you're probably not in that situation. Although I suppose you could be. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like a way to classify this, because it's obviously not like a 10 Commandments thing or not. No. But I was thinking it's kind of like when the Jews were supposed to go back and rebuild the wall. Some people stayed back in Babylon. Like the right thing to do was go build the wall, and restore it and be faithful to repairing what God has created. So it's like, you didn't really participate in building the wall. Is that a sin? Probably because what God wanted to do, obviously from the text and the story, is to rebuild the wall.
Yeah.
But maybe was there exceptions? Yeah. Okay. So that, to me, that's the, like, when I say you're missing the mark, you're staying in Babylon when you should be going to the work and doing the work of the Lord. Maybe that's a good way to phrase it up.
That's pretty good. I like it.
All right. So now is the question segment of the show. One of them is in the show notes because it was earlier on, and then one of them is in our actual Ask a Question live. The first one, I think, is a good one. And this, I forgot who this was from. How do you affect change in your church without causing unbiblical division? I think this is a good one for you, AD, because you got kicked out of your church.
Why would anyone want my advice then?
Well, you have experience.
Honestly, it depends on really what we're talking about here. I mean, if it's a lot of change in the church has to come, from an elder team and stuff like that. And a lot of times what I would recommend always is that elders would study the Bible, study the issues, pray together a lot. In fact, one of the things that I offered to do when all my church drama was going down was we should study this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm being told that there's you can't criticize brothers in Christ no matter what, essentially is what I was told. And I said, well, let's study this.
Right,
Let's read about this and that kind of thing. That's to me, that's what it really boils down to. Because if you're trying to get a change in the church that doesn't really, at the end of the day, matter, it's not something that the Bible commands, it's not part of the worship of God, then who cares? You know what I mean? Like, just drop it. Like, for example, like I've heard, everyone's heard the story of people fighting at church meetings over whether or not to take off the wallpaper or to change the paint color in the lobby or something like that. Like, if that's the kind of change you're talking about, then just drop it. It's irrelevant. It's just an incidental. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it's a matter of like practice, like the church, what we're doing as a church, like what we're doing on Sunday, the worship service, what kind of ministries we're engaged in. Are we doing poor outreach? Are we doing homeless outreach? Like those kinds of things that actually are part of the religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Then that's something that I think the way to do it, if it's not happening, is to have conversations. If people are unsure of what to do, you got to study, you got to pray, and you got to do it together. Like not like behind people's backs. You just do it together.
Yeah, I think that's good. That was Myers that tweeted me that. Thank you for the reminder. And I would say, and this is kind of a little different for you because you were actually part of the leadership team.
Sure.
But I agree, like the fundamentals are there and then you need to drop it. Like, I don't think there is such thing as like godly division.
Yeah.
I think the division comes from sin and godly men call it out, but it's division comes from the sin or the misapplication, mispractice. It's not the godly person calling them out that's causing the division. And so again, if it is something that is fundamental, you go to your leadership, talk to them about it. And then if there is no change, don't stay there and be bitter and then talk to other people about it and create rumors and create division. Go to another church, like go under other leadership.
Right.
Is that crazy as a, denominational man yourself to do?
Right. I would say, so it all depends. So I'll give you an example. So here's an example of something that really did happen. And I was at the church meeting where this happened and it was insane. So basically, at the church meeting, an annual meeting, a woman stood up, an older woman, and she said that she believed that our church didn't care about women because the women didn't have I think it was a women's Bible, a women's discipleship group. That's what she said. She said, we don't care about women because we don't have a women's discipleship group. And we do have a men's discipleship group. And so somebody stood up and said, I'm very confused because we have a women's Bible study that you never come to. You know what I mean? And she was kind of taken aback by being challenged in that way. But she, for some reason, had got it into her mind that discipleship group and a Bible study, they're totally different. And there was a big controversy about this. Some people sided with her, other people didn't. And to me, I'm thinking to myself, so let me just bring it back to the Bible here. Where in the Bible does it say that we need to have a women's discipleship group? In fact, what it does say is that older women ought to be teaching the younger women, which would include you as an older woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff, that was someone that just wanted to divide for no reason. I mean, there was nothing biblically there, but there was something there that she was calling out for something, but there was no reason to cause controversy for that. So if that's something that you're interested in starting a Bible club or a theology club or a psalm singing club, and that's something that you want to do, there's no reason to cause division for that. You just either ask the pastor to do it or you do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have one, but it's fine to have one.
Do you think
I would not? I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. And so for something like that, I would not leave my church over that. I would just keep my mouth shut and deal with it.
Yeah.
But if it's something like I've become a baby Baptist and I want to convince my pastor to become a baby Baptist and they're not, and then you go to them and you say, well, let's study this. And they're like, well, no, I'm kind of decided on this one. Yeah, that might be a good reason to go to another church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In fact, I would say it definitely is.
Yeah, you would. As a guy who actually preached at a Baptist church.
I go to a Baptist church.
You still do? I thought you left.
No, I'm still there.
Oh, there you go. Faithful to the end, maybe. So my question was, do you think if you have like a ministry, a Bible study, psalm singing group, you name it, outside of the church, because you're still under the authority of your pastors from that spiritual sphere,
sure,
should they give approval on it? Should you ask them for all of those things?
I mean, I suppose you could. I mean, no, I don't think so. So, I'm just trying to think of it, what this looks like in practice. So let's just say I started to have some people over to my house and we're going to read the Bible together, or we're going to sing Psalms together. I don't really think you don't need to ask permission.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to give you a real example. I moved to Hawaii and I started a Bible study, and we had family, neighbors, friends. And before we really got to a church, like we started it right away. It was planned before we even moved to start it up. And we were starting it up. And then I started going to my church. And I went to him and I asked him, like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I have this Bible study going on. Like my first day being there, someone found out about it and asked to come. And I just want to let you know, because I'm going to be going to your church, that I have this Bible study. And he was taken back, like, no one has ever done this before. No one has ever talked to me about it. But like in that situation, is it crazy for me to ask him, like, hey, I just want to let you know, like,
it's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
But it all depends, because sometimes Bible studies really are just like a mini church where you're like teaching people. That's a little different.
Yeah. I mean, but seriously though, at the same time, I would want to, as a pastor, I don't know, I've never been a pastor, but I would like to know people are attending my church and if they're teaching Bible studies or not, because I'd want to know if they're being like orthodox or crazy.
Yeah, teaching Bible studies is a completely different thing. Because I think it's a matter of terms here. Because when I think of a Bible study, in my mind, what I think is we all get together and read the Bible and talk about it, and no one's really teaching; we're just kind of talking about it. But I do know that a lot of people have, like, I went to a Bible study that was almost like a church service. It was just like the same exact thing. He sang songs. The guy basically did a sermon. And to me, like, he called it a Bible study, but to me, it really wasn't. It was
a church service.
It's a church service. So yeah, I would say, yeah, if you're teaching, if you're planning on teaching, your pastor has to know about that for sure.
Well, in my case, like, I don't know why this matters, but just to say it is, I wasn't like teaching a sermon, but I was definitely leading the group, and I was the authoritative figure on if that was correct or not. And I was laying down the law sometimes, because some people, are crazy.
Wow.
Well, you always get that one person that has been super spiritual their whole life, but don't know anything about the Bible, but think they do. And then they talk about, this great Sermon on the Mount that never happened. And then everyone looks around like with crazy eyes, like, who's going to say something? Who's going to say something?
You had to be that guy.
You had to be. Yeah. I actually like being that guy.
I think I know you do. I know.
There's been Bible studies I've not been invited back to. I'm just going to be honest about that. All right. Last question, and then we'll wrap this up. From Big Nick: Christian music, like it, love it, hate it, or indifferent? If yes, what genre, what bands, etc.? Looking at putting together a Christian music show. That's exciting. But other than Christian metal and a few Reformed hip hop artists, I'm looking to learn more. I'm assuming looking to learn more about if there's good Christian music besides the few. And I would say no. No, there's not. No, I'm just kidding. There probably is, but it's just probably not on the radio station.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Christian music, to be perfectly honest.
I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah.
Any song that I've liked has been instantly killed by 10 other bands singing that same song on the radio.
I like that one song. What was that one? What was the name of the group? It was Though You Slay Me. I don't even know who did it, but it was.
Oh, yeah. Shane and Shane. It was Psalms 34.
Yeah, that was a good one. I like that one.
Maybe it wasn't. But it was Shane and Shane. Yeah. That was good. They are doing some good stuff. 80. I'm not 80. Big Nick. I'm sorry. I don't have any recommendations.
Yeah, I don't either.
I do know. Oh, I did know at one time in my life, Phil Wickham, before he got big. He was a good artist, except when he tries to go all like techno Christian. But when he has his acoustic sets, he's phenomenal. His whole family's phenomenal. But I bet if you knew some of those heavy metal people or those hip hop people that you talked about that have talent, and some of them do, honestly, Christian rap has gone to the next level lately, quite honestly. I bet they would know some other Christian artists that are good in the genre that just aren't popular. So maybe reach out to them. That's my words of advice.
There you go.
There you go. Well, I'll have to say it is time for us to wrap up. If you have not already, please go subscribe, comment in the sections if you're, on YouTube, because that helps with the algorithms, I've heard. You can follow us, Real AD Robles on Twitter, How to Build a Tent for me. Please think about becoming a Patreon where you can join us live. I'm telling you, it's the best time in the world. And you guys make the show so much better with your comments, questions, all that good stuff. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the show with a friend. We'll talk to you next time. God bless.
All righty.